Chapter 4 of Inspector French's Greatest Case by Freeman, Wills, Crofts. This Librivox recording is in the public domain. Read by Yoganand. Inspector French's Greatest Case, Chapter 4, Missing. About 10 o'clock on the morning of the 10th day after the murder of Charles Getting, Inspector French sat in his room at New Scotland Yard, wondering for the 1000th time if there was no clue in the affair which he had overlooked, no line of research which he had omitted to follow up. He had seldom found himself up against so baffling a problem. Though from the nature of the case, as he told himself with exasperation, a solution should be easily reached, yet he could find nothing to go on. The clues he had obtained looked promising enough, but they led nowhere. None of the stolen notes had reached the bank, nor had any of the diamonds come on the market. No one in whom he was interested had become suddenly rich, and all his possible suspects were able more or less satisfactorily to account for their time on the fatal evening. French had just taken up his pen to write out a statement of what he had done in the hope of discovering some omission when his telephone rang. Absent-mindedly he took up the receiver. "I want to speak to Inspector French," he heard a familiar voice. "Say that Mr. Duke of Mr. Duke and Peabody is on the phone." There was a suggestion of eagerness in the voice that instantly roused the inspector's interest. "Inspector French speaking," he answered promptly. "Good morning, Mr. Duke. I hope you have some news for me." "I have some news," the distant voice returned, "but I don't know whether it bears on our quest. I've just had a letter from Crofts, you remember, the manager of our Amsterdam branch, and from what he tells me, it looks as if Vanderkemp had disappeared." "Disappeared?" French echoed. "How? Since when?" "I don't know exactly. I'm having the files looked up to try and settle dates. It appears that he has been absent from the Amsterdam office for several days, and Crofts thought he was over here, but we have not seen him. I don't understand the matter. Perhaps, if you're not too busy, you could come round and I'll show you Crofts' letter." "I'll come at once." Half an hour later, French was mounting the stairs of the Hatton Garden office. With a face wreathed in smiles, Billy Newton ushered him into the private office. Mr. Duke seemed nervous and a trifle excited as he shook hands. "The more I think over this affair, Inspector, the less I like it," he began immediately. "I do hope there is nothing wrong. I will tell you all I know, but before I show you Crofts' letter, I had better explain how it came to be written." He looked up interrogatively, then, as French nodded, continued. "As I think I have already mentioned, Vanderkemp is my travelling agent. He attends sales and auctions in all the countries of Europe. He has carried some very large deals for me, and I have every confidence both in his business acumen and his integrity. I told you also that amongst others he had purchased and brought to London the greater part of the missing stones." "You told me that, sir." "Of late years, when Vanderkemp is not on the road, he has been working in the Amsterdam branch. Some 3 or 4 days before poor Getting's death, he had returned from a tour through southern Germany, where he had been buying jewels from some of the former nobility who had fallen on the evil days since the Revolution. 3 days ago, on last Monday to be exact, I learned that a very famous collection of jewels was shortly to be sold in Florence, and I wrote that evening to Crofts telling him to send Vanderkemp to Italy to inspect and value the stones with a view to my purchasing some of them. This is Crofts' reply, which I received this morning. You see what he says. I note to instructions resending Vanderkemp to Florence, but he had not yet returned here from London, where I presumed he was staying with your knowledge and by your orders. When he arrives, I will send him on at once. What do you make of that, Inspector?" "Vanderkemp did not come to London then?" "Not to my knowledge. He certainly did not come here." "I should like to know why Mr. Crofts thought he had, and also the date he was supposed to start." "We can learn that by writing to Crofts." Inspector French remained silent for a few moments. It seemed to him now that he had neglected this Dutch office. It was at least another line of inquiry, and one which might easily bear fruitful results. The staff there, Mr. Duke had stated, consisted of 4 persons, the manager, a typist, and office boy. There was also at times this traveller Vanderkemp, the same Vanderkemp who was uncle to Stanley Harrington. It was more than likely that these persons knew of the collection of diamonds. The manager would certainly be in Mr. Duke's confidence on the matter. Vanderkemp had actually purchased and brought to London a large number of stones which he had seen put into the safe though of course it did not follow that he knew that they had been retained there. Besides, in the same way as in the London office, leakage of the information to outside acquaintances might easily occur. Inquiries in Amsterdam seemed to French to be indicated. "I think I shouldn't wire," he said at last. "There is no use in starting scares unless we are sure something is wrong. Probably the thing is capable of the most ordinary explanation. But I'll tell you what I'll do. I'll slip across to Amsterdam and make a few inquiries. If anything is wrong, I'll get to know." "Good. I'd be very pleased if you did that. I'll write Shoves and tell him to help you in every way he can." French shook his head. "I shouldn't do that either, if you don't mind," he declared. "I'll just go over and have a look round. There's no need to mention it to anyone." Mr. Duke demurred, pointing out that a note from him would enlist Mr. Shove's help. But French maintained his ground, and the merchant agreed to carry out his wishes. French crossed by the night service from Harwich, and 8:30 next day emerged from the central station into the delightful old world capital. Though bent on sordid enough business, he could not but feel the quaint charm of the city as he drove to the Bible Hotel in the Dam Rock, and again as after breakfast he sauntered out to reconnoitre. Messrs. Duke and Peabody's office was close by in the single cracked, a semi-business street with a tree-lined canal down its centre, and crouching at one corner a heavily gabled church with a queer little wooden tower not unlike a monstrous candle extinguisher. French had opposed Mr. Duke's offer to write to the manager introducing him, as he did not wish any of the Amsterdam staff to be aware beforehand of his visit. He had on many occasions obtained a vital hint from the start, a sudden look of apprehension which an unexpected question had produced, and he was anxious not to neglect the possibility of a similar suggestion in this case. He therefore pushed open the swing door and without giving a name asked for the manager. Mr. Shoves was a dapper little man with a pompous manner and an evident sense of his own value. He spoke excellent English and greeted his caller politely as he motioned him to a chair. French lost no time in coming to the point. "I've called, sir," he began in a harsh tone, not at all in accord with his usual Soapy Joe character, while he transfixed the other with a cold and inimical stare, with reference to the murder of Mr. Getting. "I'm Inspector French of the Criminal Investigation Department of New Scotland Yard." But his little plot did not come off. Mr. Shoves merely raised his eyebrows, and with a slight shrug of his shoulders, contrived to produce a subtle suggestion that he was surprised not with the matter, but with the manner of his visitor's announcement. "Ah, yes," he murmured easily. "A sad business truly. And I understand there is no trace of the murderer and thief? It must be disquieting to Londoners to have deeds of violence committed with such impunity in their great city." French, realizing that he had lost the first move, changed his tone. "It is true, sir, that we have as yet made no arrest, but we are not without hope of doing so shortly. It was to gain some further information that I came over to see you." "I am quite at your disposal." "I needn't ask you if you can give me any directly helpful news, because in that case you would have already volunteered it. But it may be that you can throw light upon some side issue of which you may not have realized the importance." "Such as?" "Such, for example, as the names of persons who were aware of the existence of diamonds in Mr. Duke's safe. That is one of many lines." "Yes, and others? Suppose we take that one first. Can you, as a matter of fact, tell me if the matter was known of over here?" "I knew of it, if that is what you mean," Mr. Shoves answered in a slightly dry tone. "Mr. Duke told me of his proposed deal and asked me to look out for stones for him. Mr. Vanderkemp also knew of it, as he bought a lot of the stones and took them to London. But I do not think anyone else knew." "What about your clerk and the office boy?" Mr. Shoves shook his head. "It is impossible that either could have heard of it." French, though he had begun inauspiciously, continued the interrogation with his usual suavity. He asked several other questions, but without either learning anything of interest or surprising Shoves into showcasing embarrassment or suspicious symptoms. Then he turned to the real object of his visit. "Now, about your traveller, Mr. Shoves. What kind of man is Mr. Vanderkemp?" Under the genial and deferent manner which French was now exhibiting, Shoves had thawed, and he really seemed anxious to give all the help he could. Vanderkemp, it appeared, was a considerable asset to the firm, Though, owing to his age, he was just over 60, he was not able to do so much as formerly. Personally, he was not very attractive. He drank a little too much, he gambled, and there were discreditable, though unsubstantiated tales of his private life. Moreover, he was of morose temper and somewhat short-mannered, except when actually negotiating a deal, when he could be suave and polished enough. But he had been known to perform kind actions. For instance, he had been exceedingly good to his nephew Harrington. Neither Shoops nor anyone else in the concern particularly liked him, but he had one invaluable gift, a profound knowledge of precious stones and an accuracy in valuing them which was almost uncanny. He had done well for the firm, and Mr. Duke was glad to overlook his shortcomings in order to retain his services. "I should like to have a chat with him." "Is he in at present?" "No, he went to London nearly a fortnight ago. He has not returned yet. But I am expecting him every day, as I have instructions from Mr. Duke to send him to Florence." French looked interested. "He went to London?" he repeated. "But I can assure you he never arrived there, or at least never reached Mr. Duke's office. I have asked Mr. Duke on several occasions about his staff, and he distinctly told me that he had not seen this Mr. Vanderkemp since 2 or 3 weeks before the murder." "But that's most extraordinary," Shoops exclaimed. "He certainly left here to go to London on what day was it?" "It was the very day poor Getting was murdered. He left by the day service via Rotterdam and Queenborough. At least he was to do so, for I only saw him on the previous evening." "Well, he never arrived. Was it on business he was going?" "Yes, Mr. Duke wrote for him." "Mr. Duke wrote for him?" French echoed, at last genuinely surprised. "What? To cross that day? To see him in the office on the following morning? I can show you the letter." He touched a bell and gave the necessary instructions. "There it is," he continued, handing over the paper which the clerk brought him. It was an octavo sheet of memorandum paper with the firm's name printed on the top, and bore the following typewritten letter: 20th November, H.A. Shoops, Esquire. "I should be obliged if you'd please ask Mr. Vanderkemp to come over and see me here at 10 a.m. on Wednesday, 26th instance, as I wish him to undertake negotiations for a fresh purchase. He may have to go to Stockholm at short notice." The note was signed R.A. Duke, with the attendant flourish with which French had grown familiar. He sat staring at the sheet of paper, trying to fit this new discovery into the scheme of things. But it seemed to him an insoluble puzzle. Was Mr. Duke not really the innocent, kindly old gentleman he had fancied, but rather a member, if not the author, of some deep-seated conspiracy? If he had written this note, why had he not mentioned the fact when Vanderkemp was being discussed? Why had he shown surprise when he received Shoops' letter saying that the traveller had crossed London? What was at the bottom of the whole affair? An idea struck him, and he examined the letter more closely. "Are you sure this is really Mr. Duke's signature?" he asked slowly. Mr. Shoops looked at him curiously. "Why, yes," he answered. "At least it never occurred to me to doubt it." "You might let me see some of his other letters?" In a few seconds half a dozen were produced, and French began whistling below his breath as he sat comparing the signatures, using a lens which he took from his pocket. After he had examined each systematically, he laid them down on the table and sat back in his chair. "That was stupid of me," he announced. "I should have learnt all I wanted without asking for these other letters. That signature is forged. See here, look at it for yourself." He passed the lens to Shoops, who in his turn examined the name. "You see, the lines of the writing are not smooth. They are a mass of tiny shakes and quavers. That means they have not been written quickly and boldly. They have been slowly drawn or traced over pencil. Compare one of these notes, and you will see that while at a distance the signature looks identical, in reality they are quite different. No, Mr. Duke never wrote that. I am afraid Mr. Vanderkemp has been the victim of some trick." Shoops was visibly excited. He hung on the other's words and nodded emphatically at his conclusions. Then he swore comprehensively in Dutch. "Good heavens, Inspector," he cried. "You see the significance of all that?" French glanced at him keenly. "In what way?" he demanded. "Why, here we have a murder and a robbery, and then we have this occurring at the very same time. Well, does it not look suggestive?" "You mean the two things are connected?" "Well, what do you think?" Mr. Shoops replied with some impatience. "It certainly does look like it," French admitted slowly. Already his active brain was building up a theory, but He wanted to get the other's views. "You are suggesting, I take it, that Vanderkamp may have been concerned in the crime?" Schultz shook his head decidedly. "I am suggesting nothing of the kind," he retorted. "That's not my job. The thing merely struck me as peculiar." "No, no," French answered smoothly. "I've not expressed myself clearly. Neither of us is making any accusation. We are simply consulting together in a private and, I hope, a friendly way, each anxious only to find out the truth. Any suggestion may be helpful. If I make the suggestion that Mr. Vanderkamp is a guilty man in order to enable us to discuss the possibility, it does not follow that either of us believes it to be true, still less that I should act on it. I am aware of that, but I don't make any such suggestion." "Then I do," French declared, "simply as a basis for discussion. Let us suppose then, purely for argument's sake, that Mr. Vanderkamp decides to make some of the firm's wealth his own. He is present when the stones are being put into the safe, and in some way, when Mr. Duke's back is turned, he takes an impression of the key. He crosses to London, either finds Getting in the office or is interrupted by him, murders the old man, takes the diamonds, and clears out. What do you think of that?" "What about the letter?" "Well, that surely fits in. Mr. Vanderkamp must leave his office in some way which won't arouse your suspicion or cause you to ask questions of the London office. What better way than by forging the letter?" Mr. Schultz swore for the second time. "If he has done that," he cried hotly, "let him hang. I'll do everything I can, Inspector, to help you find out, and that not only on general grounds, but for old Getting's sake, for whom I had a sincere regard." "I thought you would feel that way, sir. Now to return to details. I suppose you haven't the envelope that letter came in?" "Never saw it," Mr. Schultz replied. "The clerk who opened it would destroy it." "Better have the clerk in, and we'll ask the question." Mr. Schultz made a sudden gesture. "By Jove!" he cried. "It was Vanderkamp himself. He acts as head clerk when he is here." "Then we don't get any evidence there. Either the letter came through the post, in which case he destroyed the envelope in the usual way, or else he brought the letter to the office and slipped it among the others." French picked up the letter again. Experience had taught him that typescript could be extremely characteristic, and he wondered if this in question could be made to yield up any of its secrets. It certainly had peculiarities. The lens revealed a dent in the curve of the N, where the type had evidently struck something hard, and the tail of the G was slightly defective. French next examined the genuine letters and was interested to find that type showed the same irregularities. It was therefore certain that the forged letter had been typed in the London office. He sat thinking deeply, unconsciously whistling his little tune through his closed teeth. There was another peculiarity about the forged note. The letters were a trifle indented, showing that the typewriter keys had been struck with rather more than the usual force. He turned the sheet over, and he saw that so much was this the case that the stops were punched almost through. Picking up the genuine letters, he looked for the same peculiarity, but the touch in these cases was much lighter, and even the full stop barely showed through. This seemed to justify a further deduction that the writer of the forged note was unskilled, probably an amateur, while that of the others was an expert. French felt he could safely assume that the forged note had been typed by some unauthorized person using the machine in the London office. But, so far as he could see, these deductions threw no light on the guilt or innocence of Vanderkamp. The letter might have come from some other person in London, or Vanderkamp might have typed it himself during one of his visits to the metropolis. More data was wanted before a conclusion could be reached. Though from what he had seen of Schultz, the inspector thought it unlikely that he was mixed up in what he was beginning to believe was a far-reaching conspiracy, he did not mention his discoveries to him, but continued trying to pump him for further information about the missing traveller. Vanderkamp, it seemed, was a tall man, or would have been if he held himself erect, but he had stooped shoulders and a slouching way of walking which detracted from his height. He was inclined to stoutness and had dark hair and a sallow complexion. His chin was clean-shaven, but he wore a heavy, dark moustache. Glasses covered his short-sighted eyes. French obtained some samples of his handwriting, but no photograph of him was available. In fact, Mr. Schultz did not seem able to supply any further information, nor did an interrogation of the typist and office boy, both of whom spoke a little English, produce any better results. "Where did Mr. Vanderkamp live?" French asked when he thought he had exhausted the resources of the office. It appeared that the traveller was unmarried, and Mr. Crofts did not know if he had any living relatives other than Harrington. He boarded with Mevrouw Bondix in the Kinkerstraat, and thither the two men betook themselves, French begging the other's company in case he should be needed as interpreter. Mevrouw Bondix was a garrulous little old lady who had but little English, and upon whom Crofts' questions acted as a push-button does on an electric bell. She overwhelmed them with a flood of conversation of which French could understand not one word, and from which even the manager was hard put to it to extract the meaning. But the gist of the matter was that Vanderkemp had left the house at 8:30 on the night before the murder, with the expressed intention of taking the 9 o'clock train for London. Since then she had neither seen him nor heard from him. "But," French exclaimed, "I thought you told me he had crossed by daylight service on the day of the murder." "He said he would," Crofts answered with a somewhat puzzled air. "He said so most distinctly. I remember it particularly because he pointed out that Mr. Duke would probably ask him, after the interview, to start by the afternoon Continental train on his new journey, and he preferred to travel during the previous day so as to ensure a good night's sleep in London. He said that in an answer to a suggestion of mine that he would be in time enough if he went over on the night before his interview." "What time do these trains get into London?" "I don't know, but we can find out at the office." "I'd like to go to the Central Station next, if you don't mind coming along," French declared, "so we could look them up there. But before I go, I want you to tell me if Mr. Vanderkemp figures in any of these." He pointed to a number of photographic groups which adorned the chimney-piece and walls. It happened that the missing traveller appeared in one of the groups, and both Mr. Crofts and Mevrouw Bondix bore testimony to the excellence of the portrait. "Then I'll take it," French announced as he slipped the card into his pocket. The two men next went to the Central Station and looked up the trains. They found that the day service did not reach Victoria until 10:05 p.m. The significance of this was not lost upon French. Arch had stated he had reached the office in Hatton Garden at 10:15, and that it could not have been later was established by the evidence of Constable Alcorn. The body at that time was cold, so that the crime must have taken place some considerable time earlier. A man, therefore, who had crossed by the daylight service from Amsterdam could not possibly have had time to commit the murder. Had Vanderkemp lied deliberately to Crofts when he told him he was using that daylight service? If so, was it in order to establish an alibi? Had he a secret appointment with Gething for an earlier hour on the fatal evening, and had he crossed the night before with the object of keeping it? French felt these were questions which required satisfactory answers, and he made a mental note not to rest until he had found them. With his new friend's aid, he began to interrogate the staff of the Central Station in hope of ascertaining whether or not the missing man had actually left by the train in question. But of this he could learn nothing. None of the employees appeared to know Vanderkemp's appearance, nor, after that lapse of time, could anyone recall having seen a passenger of his description. That day and the next French spent in the charming old city trying to learn what he could of the missing man's life and habits. He came across a number of persons who were acquainted with the traveller, but no one with whom he had been really intimate. None of these people could give him much information, nor did any of them seem to care whether or no Vanderkemp should ever be heard of again. From all he heard, French concluded that Vanderkemp's character was such as might be expected in the guilty man, but there was but little evidence of motive and none at all of guilt. He returned to London by the night service, and having ascertained that the steamer he crossed by was the same that had run on the date of Vanderkemp's assumed journey, he made exhaustive inquiries as to the latter from the staff on board, unfortunately with negative results. Next day his efforts were equally fruitless. He spent most of it in discussing the situation with Mr. Duke and trying to make a list of the persons who could have had the access to the typewriter, but nowhere could he get a gleam of light. The authorship of the letter remained as inscrutable a mystery as the murder of Gething. Having circulated a description of Vanderkemp containing a copy of the photograph, French went home that night a worried and disconsolate man. But though he did not know it, further news was even at the moment on the way to him. The end of Chapter 4.